Welcome to the Daily Boogie.
The psychiatrist who briefed Congress on Trump's mental state, this is an emergency. The case for evaluating the president's mental state, mental capacity by force if necessary. Because that would be a good look for the Democrats, wouldn't it? Let's go in, let's drag Trump out by force. We'll perhaps sedate him with maybe a start gun. What would you call it? Like a... Not a starter's gun, that won't do anything. We'll sedate him with a dart, a sedative dart gun, like you would fire into the arse of a rhino, perhaps. Do you see? So we'll hit him with one of those, wait till he stumbles around a little bit. Or we can put some sleeping pills into his quarter pounder, perhaps. Oh, it's you. He can be disbarred for diagnosing without ever even talking to the patient. Malpractice. Correct. Of course he can. It's horrendous. But since when do the rules apply? Come on now, Fritzer. You know better than that. You know better than to apply the rules. Yeah, God's woman. This is an emergency. We have to evaluate him by force. The longer Donald Trump is in office, this is Vox, by the way, the more he shocks and alarms us with his strange and extremely unpresidential behaviour. Yes, because that's the marker of sanity, is monitoring how shocked Vox gets. How alarmed the readers and writers of Vox get. That's how you determine how crazy someone may or may not be. If they're not alarmed, the person's not crazy. From the incoherent, fallacious interview he gave to the New York Times on December 28 to Tuesday's tweet about his nuclear button, to his Saturday morning assertion that he is, quote, very stable genius, the remarks keep getting more menacing, bizarre, and portentous of disaster. Wow. Look at these tweets here. As Vox's Ezra Klein recently wrote, the President of the United States is not well. But how unwell is he really? See, this is interesting. Because Vox's Ezra Klein is now being quoted in Vox, the President of the United States is not well. That's a truth. That's just an assumed truth now. But how? So the question is, how unwell is he? You see? It's not whether he's well or unwell. Someone in Vox already said he's not well, therefore we can just put that down as a fundamental pillar of our reality, and we can move the discussion on to how unwell is he. Because, remember, it's an emergency. We need to do this now, by force if necessary. This is a question of crucial importance. Not just because the Vice President and the Cabinet would need a certainty about his mental incompetence to invoke the 25th Amendment and declare him unable to do his job, an option that, while still highly unlikely to be used, is now regularly being discussed. Of course, the question of his mental health would ultimately come down to a medical opinion, and no doctor, as far as we know, has evaluated the President's mind for fitness to serve as President. Yet there is a growing call from a group of psychiatrists, the best medical experts at interpreting aberrant human behaviour, for exactly this, an emergency evaluation of the President's mental capacity by force if necessary. Hello, Marine Mum. Thanks for joining us. Leading this call is Bandy Lee, an assistant professor in forensic psychiatry. What an expert. And he's an assistant professor. The big boy professor must be busy. Forensic psychiatry, the interface of law and mental health at the Yale School of Medicine, who has devoted her 20-year career to studying, predicting, and preventing violence. Well, we all know the best way to prevent violence would be to apprehend the president by force and conduct psychological examinations on him. Good idea. This one's a thinker. She recently briefed a dozen members of Congress, Democrats and one Republican, on the president's mental state. How low are they going to go? How low can you go? As low as it takes, caged lady, I assume. As low as you can go. Lower than a snake's ass. And this week, she, along with Judith Herman at Harvard and Robert J. Lifton at Columbia, released a statement arguing that Trump is, quote, further unraveling. The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, a collection of essays from 27 mental health professionals that Lee edited, was published in October. Another understatement, perhaps. These efforts have not been welcomed by all of Lee's colleagues in psychiatry. Yes, I would assume the ones with ethics. Probably not a fan of this. Some say her warnings are unethical and break the Goldwater rule, the American Psychiatric Association's stipulation that its members never publicly discuss the mental health of a public figure. One esteemed fellow psychiatrist accused her in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine of having a, quote, misguided and dangerous morality. She may just be a communist, though, let's be fair. She has spent 20 years studying, predicting and preventing violence, and as we all know, like I said, forcibly apprehending the current sitting president, removing them from office, subjecting them to psychological exams, and from that point on, your guess is as good as mine what kind of government you would have is a great way to avoid and prevent violence. Lee notes that her position and opinions are her own and do not represent the views of Yale. Our conversation has been edited for length and clarity. Here she is, a mental health crisis in a president who is not able to cope well with ordinary stresses such as basic criticism or unflattering news. The sheer frequency of his tweets seemed to reflect the frantic state of mind he was entering, and his retweeting some violent anti-Muslim videos, there we go, showed a concerning attraction to violence. Wow. See, this is like, now this is manipulation to like god tier level. Some violent anti-Muslim videos. So that makes you think, if you aren't aware of what he tweeted, that it was violence against Muslims, right? Violent anti-Muslim videos. Of course, that wasn't the case. You can Google it yourself. But the fact that he retweeted these said, in this expert's opinion, showed a concerning attraction to violence from him. Nothing about the violence in the videos themselves, nope. The fact that the president retweeted it shows that the president has a concerning attraction to violence. Wow. And then there were the belligerent nuclear threats this week. I'd also like to emphasize that we are not diagnosing him. Okay. We keep with the Goldwater rule. We are mainly concerned that an emergency evaluation be done. Thank you. Thank you for your concern. It's most expertly. There's everything in between, provoking our allies and alienating them. Now she's a political expert, you see. Instigating civil conflict and laying a foundation for a violent culture that could give way to epidemics of violence. Not to mention poke a beehive in the Middle East by declaring Jerusalem as Israel's capital. All of these actions are consistent with the pathological pattern he has already shown of resorting to violence the more he feels threatened. One psychiatrist's opinion, apparently. Provoking our allies and alienating them? The president is crazy and needs an urgent psychological examination. Right? And it's no accident that gun deaths are up at least 12% since 2016, and there is an increase in schoolyard bullying, an unprecedented spike in hate crimes that continue to this day. She's asked about, is it wrong for you to be doing this? She says, there's a disagreement over ethical rules, not a medical assessment. What would the pro-Trump psychologist say? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't read about it in Vox. Just quietly. Here we go. One thing that seems to make a lot of people uncomfortable about psychiatrists like yourself commenting on Trump's mental disturbances is that you have not evaluated him. So how is your assessment ethical? Why should the public take it seriously? A diagnosis, on the other hand, is a personal affair that does not change with the situation, and you require all relevant information, including, I believe, a personal interview. Once you declare danger, you are calling first for containment and removal of weapons from the person. And second, for a full evaluation, which may then yield diagnoses. Until that happens, physicians and medical health professionals are expected to err on the side of safety and can be held legally liable if they fail to act. So we're merely calling for an urgent evaluation so that we may have definitive answers. Yep. The psychiatrist is demanding access to the president. She's already outlaid all the policy things she disagrees with, like the Jerusalem thing, instigating civil conflict and laying a foundation for a violent culture that could give way to epidemics of violence. She disagrees with him politically. So she wants to get Trump down one-on-one, give him an assessment of violence and danger so they can get rid of him. So good luck to her. We are assessing dangerousness, not making a diagnosis. Assessing dangerousness is making a judgment about the situation, not the person. The same person may not be dangerous. We've touched on this before in a different Periscope. The same person may not be dangerous in a different situation, for example. And it is his threat to public health, not his personal affairs, that is our concern. So you see, it's not that Donald Trump's dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. It's just that because he's the president, he might be dangerous. And that's what we need to assess, whether or not he's dangerous. I would argue to this obviously very educated and accomplished and, organized woman that anybody is potentially dangerous when they're the most powerful person in the world. That's why you have to think very carefully and, treat them a certain way when you just throw up, we should remove them by force and conduct psychological assessments. You see. Because it is, a particularly serious job. It is a pretty big job being president. You never know. It's dangerous now. Here we go. We encounter this often in mental health. Those who most require an evaluation are least likely to submit to one. Oh, isn't that cute? You see, he needs an evaluation more than anyone. That's why he's not going to say yes to it. Oh, okay. That is the reason why in all 50 states we have not only the legal authority, but often the legal obligation to contain someone even against their will when it's an emergency. So in an emergency, neither consent nor confidentiality requirements hold. Safety comes first. What we do in the case of danger is we contain the person, we remove them from access to weapons, and we do an urgent evaluation. This is what we have been calling for with the president, based on basic medical standards of care. We have been calling to remove the president by force, contain them, because we care. Yes, I care so much. I want to storm into that office. I want to pin the president down, stick him in the neck with a needle so he goes to sleep. He'll wake up in a straitjacket under my direct control, and I will care for him, and I will make sure that he gets the best of care. Well, not the best of care, actually. Just basic medical standards of care. Just the basics. He doesn't deserve any. He won't get any better than that where he's going. Bread and water. For Presidente. Yes, at first I was keeping this confidential and was horrified when it first leaked out to the press sometime over the summer. But the lawmakers seem surprisingly okay about it, and so I will tell you. Medical ethics encourage us to be of public service by consulting with the government. So when Congress members reach out to us, we are open to consulting with them no matter what the party. A half dozen of them got in touch after the Duty to Warn conference at Yale in April. Then an influential former Congress member started making arrangements for me to testify before all of Congress. Hang on. An influential former Congress member? Not influential really anymore, are they? You know, priorities. That kept getting postponed while the Mueller investigation advanced. How did these conversations go? They received us enthusiastically. Yes, I bet they did. Their level of concern was surprisingly high. You don't say, darling. From the dozen we have met with, it seemed they were already convinced of the dangerousness of the president and the need for an evaluation. Yes, they're already convinced that he's dangerous. I wonder why they were so enthusiastic to have found a psychiatrist willing to go through with this. Hey, guys, we got one. We got one. She's going to do it. Yay. Finally. We thought we'd never find a trained person of high integrity. Another thing that has been happening on the side is that a clinic at Yale's law school recommended that we be ready to respond emergently within an hour or two of being called. So we have been doing both. A DC-based psychiatrist has been collecting names of colleagues who would be willing to respond in an emergency, and members of the National Academy of Medicine have also been recruited for helping us to select candidates for an independent expert panel. I just wonder how this emergency would go down. Like, are the men in white coats literally going to be storming the White House? The Secret Service may have something to say about that. I don't know. I'm not sure this is a winning strategy. I'm really not. But, hey, what do I know? I'm not a psychiatrist. The dangerousness of the president must be evaluated by force if necessary. And one can only hope that justice is done in this very, very dangerous world we're living in. So...